Welcome to another episode of the Luke Humphrey Running Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Humphrey, and our mission is to help you maximize your training through a blend of science and practicability. So let's get going. All right, welcome back. This is Luke Humphrey, and today we are going to talk about early season paces. So how many times have you set a time goal, thought it through, looked at it, like, man, that's a little scary, but I think I can do that. Everything points to that I can do that, but it's still, man, a little scary to look at. So I have definitely been there, and I'm sure many of you have as well. Now, how about when you started the training plan, take a look at that first workout on your schedule, and that new race pace is staring back at you. Hands are shaking, knees are getting weak, sweat's building up. And you think, oh crap, that is fast, right? So I've been there as well, and it's not a pleasant feeling, but we can get through it, and ultimately that's how breakthroughs are made, right? You got to test the waters a little bit, but there's a few situations where this might be the case. So first one, maybe we are looking at hitting that big home run goal, say a Boston qualifier, say, 15 minutes faster than your personal best, something that, especially if you've been doing marathons for a while and you say you've been stuck on, 3:30s and, you need a 3:15 to qualify. That's a pretty big jump, right? So that's going to be a test for sure. The second one, maybe we haven't run a marathon in a long time, if ever. But since we've done some relatively fast, shorter races, all the charts say that we're capable of something much faster than we had in mind, and so we're going with what the numbers are telling us, right? And then the last one here is the opposite, right? So you're the habitual marathoner, but you recognize that you need to work on that get down speed. So I'll give bonus points to anybody who can name the reference the book that reference is coming from, and so think about that. Think about all your old school running books, and so anyway, that 5K time just looks pretty darn fast, right? It might as well look like it's a world record attempt. So there's a lot of reasons why, but the bottom line is that the paces might be a big jump, right? And regardless of the situation. And when looking at speed, maybe you have an intro workout of 12 by 400 meters at goal pace, and that goal pace feels more like mile pace. So that hard but doable workout in theory has now really become the impossible. So if that 5K goal pace is approaching, say, what your current 3K plus pace is, then we are taking it from a place of being below our VO2 max to a place where it's right at or above our VO2 max. So this definitely completely changes the scope of the workout. Plus it makes it really tough on you, and it probably won't end the way you want it to. When you look at marathon paces, let's say you're looking at your first marathon tempo of 4 miles, but your first half marathon wasn't too far off of that goal pace, so yikes. So the same thing applies here. Early on, we might be making a lighter marathon pace workout into a lactate threshold type of workout, and we're completely defeating the purpose of that. And if you're in a marathon segment and doing this, then it can spell disaster later on. But in reality, it could spell disaster for either situation you're in, right? So being in a position where the early season workouts are way faster than they need to be isn't going to allow the adaptations to occur that we really want, right? So for marathoners, why would this be the case? If you're following the Hanson's marathon method plan, then you're looking at 18 weeks of running, and that's a long time. So that's buffered a bit in the beginner plan because you have the easy weeks in the beginning. In the advanced plan, you're getting right down to business. Right away you're doing workouts. But regardless, you have several weeks of buildup of speed in marathon pace workouts before switching to the marathon specific workout over the last few weeks. So if we were taking the first few weeks of speed that's supposed to be on the slower end of the range, and then it might actually be closer to lactate threshold pace for some people, and then a marathon pace that would be more likely a hard, easy run, and switch those to above LT, then we set ourselves up to be burnt out by 10 to 12 weeks of training. And how many people have done that and gotten to 6-8 weeks out from the race, and you're just bombed, right? Like you can't. It's way harder than it should be. You're really dragging, and to be fair, marathon training itself is hard, but you're way beyond that point, right? And so if you were in a situation where you were really going for a big time and you made those workouts harder than they need to, and not even you really just followed, okay, it says goal marathon pace, you really set yourself up to be maybe too aggressive. And so this works in this case, but it also works if you're somebody who hammers right away and digs that hole a little deeper than it needs to be dug early on, and you set yourself up to be paying the price for it later on. But for today, let's just talk about, this wasn't really your fault. You just followed what the plan says, right? And it says goal time, so you're running your goal paces and you're doing it, but physiologically it might just be too aggressive early on. But getting back to what we were talking about, if you're training for a 5K or a 10K, then you might not have an 18-week schedule, but say 14 weeks. It's still a long time, especially as you're doing more and more intense work, right? As far on the physiological scale, you're getting closer and closer to VO2 max and even above on a lot of that stuff. So with half marathon and marathon training, we might be able to get away with it for a while because but as the intensities get faster and faster, the potential damage gets higher and higher, right? And so things like DOMS, delayed onset of muscle soreness, they're going to occur more regularly. Overall muscle damage is going to be higher. And ultimately, we dig that hole a little deeper than we can fill back in with the recovery time that we work out, right? So over the course of several weeks, whether it's we either hit a breaking point or we just get burnt out at performance level, right? So either way, and it might even be a combination of those things, performance is going to suffer. It's going to take a nosedive. And even if we do survive, we haven't particularly done anything to make ourselves confident. We end up hanging on rather than building up. And so actually in the show notes, I've linked to another post. It's a little bit about this. This focuses more on whether I should do my equivalent speed work in the beginning at my equivalent pace, or what I've actually done for speed work. So check that out. It's linked into the blog post or show notes. So moving on, whatever the situation we're in, the question remains the same. How do we bridge the gap between where we're at and where we want to be? Just diving in may work, but is it the most reasonable situation? So to me, the chances of failure are a lot higher with this approach. So as a coach, I approach in 3 different ways. The first way is I make sure my athletes aren't just doing the type of training all the time. So they're not just doing marathon, or they're not just doing 5Ks all year round. I try to switch it up. There's a number of ways to time this. So one way is during a time that doesn't make sense to train for that primary event. So if you're primarily a marathoner, say you're in Florida, you may benefit from doing a speed segment during the summer months when training for a marathon would be absolutely miserable. Then you could switch gears in September and run a marathon in, say, December or January. And there's so many marathons now throughout the course of the year, well, non-pandemic years anyway, when the weather is much more favorable to them. So starting in December, you have races like you have Cal and then Houston and Dallas, and you have a ton of races down south in the fall, in the late fall, early winter. And I would say even for Michigan, like where I'm at, our Decembers are pretty good. You can usually get through December okay, and then January and February are usually the 2 worst months in Michigan with snow and cold, and then March is usually hit or miss. So you could definitely time it. So when people start training for marathons in the summer, they go through. It's warm, right? It's warm. It's hot, and there's some benefit to it as well because the benefits you get from the heat and the humidity are going to serve you really well. But it can also be pretty hard on you too, right? So there's opportunities to time those around kind of the calendar as well. The second thing I would say is just adjust overall paces. So by this I mean each workout for a certain goal will be kept the same. So if your 5K pace is 7 minutes per mile and you are looking to get down to 640 per mile, what I might do is take a week or so at the current 7-minute pace, then the next couple weeks cut it down to 650 pace for a few weeks, and then close the segment out, say 3 to 4 weeks at the goal pace of 640. So this gives the body time to adapt to the new levels, and we're not digging that hole so deep that we can't get out of it. And you're ultimately going to allow yourself time to gradually improve that new pace and feel better at that new pace. So this way, just to be clear, this way is each workout is at the current pace, and then we do that for a couple weeks, and then the next few weeks we go take a step towards that goal pace, and then the last few weeks we do another step and be at that goal pace for a few weeks. So, but each workout is the same pace, right? So going back to that 7-minute pace, if you're doing a speed workout at 7-minute pace, the whole workout's at 7-minute pace. And then in a few weeks that goes down to 650 pace, and then a few weeks after that it goes down to 640 pace, because that'll make sense here in a second. The third thing I would say is cut down paces during the workout. So flipping it, let's assume your current marathon pace is 8 minutes per mile and you want to get to 730 pace per mile. You have a 4-mile you have a 4-mile tempo at the goal pace. And at the beginning of your segment, that might be faster than what your LT is. So again, changing completely the dynamics of the workout intentions. So what I might do is say first mile 8 minutes, and then go to the next mile at 750, then the next mile at 740, and try to close at 730 if you can. Then over the course of the next several weeks, increase the amount of time in the range of goal pace to goal pace plus 10 seconds. So in this case, if our goal pace is 730, we spend more time between 730 and 740 pace, and then we just keep increasing that time in there over the course of several weeks. And then you get down to hopefully that goal pace, and you don't necessarily, you feel the same way you do at the new pace that you did several weeks before cutting it down, right? So again, you're going to make this a little bit tougher on yourself, and maybe you bounce back and forth between number 2 and number 3, and just kind of work it that way. There's definitely ways you can do it. You do make the scope of this workout a little bit harder, but it's gradually increasing the intensity and not just jumping off the diving board right into the deep end, right? So you kind of easing into it a little bit. And I like a combination. I like 2, 3, or a combination of stuff, and that doesn't have to be the same every week. It can be something different too, and it's a good way to just kind of shake some things up too. But it's a good way to make that transition over into that new goal pace. And then fourth, reduce repeat distances for the few weeks and make tempos repeat. So this is more for like marathon workouts. So for workouts like speed at a new goal pace, so I guess we can do it for both. I guess we should probably read ahead, right? You could keep repeats 200 meters to 600 meters at the new goal paces and just keep the recovery a little longer. If you're doing a marathon pace tempo, say a 4-miler, I oftentimes will just make it 8 by 800 meters or 4 by 1 miles at goal pace with short recoveries. So mind you, I don't believe the physiological adaptations are the same, but in this case, that's not really the point, because we're ultimately going to spend a lot of weeks at that goal pace. So we're not necessarily worried about having enough time to get that goal pace and be adapted to it. This is more about building the confidence into that new pace and being able to tolerate it a little better. We're kind of tricking our mind that we can run that pace, but it doesn't feel as all out as if we were doing full force workouts, right? So we're keeping those repeats down a little bit shorter, a little bit longer recoveries. And so you might not get, exactly what you wanted to out of the workout from a physiological standpoint. Mentally, I think it's a lot easier to make that transition into doing the bigger workouts, 4 or 6 weeks down the road. So to wrap up though, I love setting big goals, but big goals without a plan, that's not any good, because a big goal and then just going after it, to me, you really increase your chances for failure and not success. And so hopefully out of these 4 strategies can help really bridge that gap in the early stages. And that's really where the biggest mistakes come, is just I would say that first 4 to 8 weeks of early season where it's not supposed to be super intense, but if we're running way faster than what we're kind of ready for, that's going to set the tone for the rest of the segment. So you've already increased your level of tiredness, and so that by the time you get to the point where you're supposed to be tired, you're overcooked, right? And a lot of times that's 4 to 6 weeks out from the race, and then you just barely make it to the race, if at all. So that, to me, that's, if you can follow one of these strategies or a combination of these strategies, you can really set yourself up much better, and then really kind of help. To me, it makes it a lot more plausible of being able to handle that bigger workload later on. And then if you can do that, then your confidence is high, your fitness is high, you're setting yourself up a lot better to be able to hit that big goal. And because a lot of times that's what it comes down to, is just not having that confidence. And there is a huge difference between building up into that pace. You always want to be on an upswing going into a race rather than really hitting the workouts, but hanging on to hit the workouts, right? You don't want to get through a workout and just be like, that was it, and you're like that 2 or 3 times a week. That's not a good way to be expecting that to be a big performance boost on race day. But if you can be, start out at a lower level and be building up throughout the course of the segment, that's usually where you see big breakthroughs come through. So hopefully that helps you. I think those are 4 things I use with my athletes. Like I said, those are one of 4 strategies, but usually it's a combination of different strategies. But those are the main things I use. So if you try those out with your own, if you're using the book schedules from the book. If not, be sure to check out our plans, LukeHumphreyRunning.com. You can go to coaching options and go select plans, and we have probably over 200 different training plans that you can download right into Final Surge. Set up your paces, and you can even adjust those paces by yourself in the structured workouts. Sync them to your Garmin, have your workouts right in your watch, and takes all the guesswork out of it for you. So check those out if you want, and I also have that other blog post linked in the show notes. So like I said, hopefully that helps you, and I will talk to you guys later. All right, see ya. Thanks for listening to the Luke Humphrey Running Podcast with your host, Luke Humphrey. If you like our show and want to learn more, please visit us at www.lukehumphreyRunning.com for blogs, podcasts, coaching, and training options. See you next time.